إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. ثم أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We always begin every Friday and every week and everything that we do by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking Him. As believers, it is part of our conviction. We know that everything that Allah puts in our path or in our life is ultimately for our benefit. And so when things are going well, when we feel like we don't have any trouble or any issues at work or with our family or with our close friends, when things are going easy, we thank Allah for those times. Because as believers, we know that it's very possible that I could be doing everything right. I could be doing my best at work and treating my family well, but there may be problems that are beyond my control. That could very well happen. And so if it does happen that we do our part and Allah facilitates the rest, we thank Allah for those times, because if it wasn't for Him, we would never get to enjoy and taste that ease. At the same time, when things aren't going so well, when we feel like we're running into difficulty at work or with our family members, and just we feel troubled and we feel bothered and we wonder why is this happening and we're frustrated, as believers, we should be people who thank Allah in those times too. Because we know that everything that Allah puts in our way is only because He wants us to grow and become better people and to learn and to benefit. So it may take a few days, maybe a few weeks or months. Maybe we'll never see the wisdom behind why Allah put us through that difficulty until the afterlife. But as Muslims, we know that that wisdom is there. That anytime Allah puts us in difficult times, it's because He wants us to learn something, to grow and to become better people. And so when we're in that difficulty, we thank Allah, we thank God for that difficulty, and we ask that He help us to learn the lesson that we need to learn. And so that way, no matter whether things are going well or we feel like things aren't going well, the believer is always in a state of thanking Allah. And so their station and their rank is increasing and increasing no matter what happens to them. We live in a time where many people have decided that the path to living a successful life or getting the most out of life and living well means leaving Allah, leaving God out of the equation. And forgetting about living by these rules that come from so long ago that are so outdated, and why do we have to worry about that? That's just holding us back from doing what we could be doing. That's an attitude that we see everywhere, we see all around us today. Whether it's business owners who it looks like business owners who don't care about paying their employees as well or treating them kindly. It looks like they earn more money and it looks like they're more successful. Or we see students who don't have any conscience about cheating or copying homework and exams off of the internet. It seems like they're getting better grades and that they're making it farther in life. It looks that way on the outside. And so as believers, hopefully we are trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do what Allah has asked us. But we see around us that people who are taking shortcuts or cutting corners, it looks like they're doing better. It looks like they're making more progress. And so how do we deal with that? The thing is that our beautiful deen, this Islam, gives us firm and deep principles that we can depend on. And our Islam reminds us that at the end of the day, our success in this world and in the hereafter is completely in the hands of Allah. That we should do our part. We should do everything that Allah has kind of put within our realm of control. That's something we should do as believers. But at the end of the day, our outcomes and our results and where we end up, that is something that is purely in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's something that should make us think. How can I kind of act, if it's true that Allah ultimately is the one who can facilitate massive success for us and open doors we could never expect, then how can I tap into that and benefit from that so that I can kind of succeed in this life and in the hereafter? So in these few minutes we have together today, I wanted to focus on this idea that remembering Allah is a key to achieving that tawfiq and that help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah tells us in the Quran, in the beautiful verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. The meaning roughly translates to something like, remember me. Allah is saying, remember me and I will remember you. And scholars have talked about how us remembering Allah it can happen in different forms. It can be remembrance of the tongue where we praise Allah and we show our gratitude to Him and we declare His perfection. It can be a remembrance of Allah in our hearts. But what I wanted to focus on today is that there's also this aspect of remembering Allah with our actions, where remembering Allah with our actions means that we're devoting our energy and our time to doing what Allah has asked us to do and to staying away from what Allah has asked us to avoid. Now as a result, when Allah says "Adkurkum," that response, then so many beautiful things come from that. Scholars say that includes just abundant mercy and love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that His blessings and His protection from difficulty and giving us guidance, all of these are things that come as a result of us making an effort to remember Allah. And specifically about remembrance with the limbs, where Imam al-Ghazali puts it beautifully in one of his books, where he says, اجتهد أن لا يراك مولاك حيث نهاك. He says, like, strive and push yourself that your master, that Allah does not see you where He is forbidding you to be. I mean, think of this image or the silly example of a child who's told, like, stay away from a cookie jar that's above the fridge. Like, you're not allowed to take from it yourself. I'll only give to you for my permission. And you have this image in your head of the kid kind of like sneaking when he thinks his parents are asleep and he's trying to take some extra cookies, and then his parents catch him and they see him. That scene where this child has been told that it's good for you to stay away from this, and then they are caught in this kind of embarrassing position where they are somewhere that they have been told to avoid. That's kind of one way we can think about what Imam al-Ghazali is describing here. That there are some places Allah has told us that if you go here, it's not good for you, it won't be good for you in this life and in the hereafter. And so we should be people who strive to not be in a place where Allah looks or gazes and sees what we're doing and finds us in those places He's told us to avoid. And similarly, we should be people who strive so that لَا يَفْقِدُكَ حَيْثُ أَمَرَ, where Allah does not expect us to be somewhere or expect us to rise to some kind of occasion and that we are not there or that we fail to kind of stand up for that. So this attitude, living like this, where it's always thinking about what is bringing me closer to Allah and what is taking me closer to somewhere that I don't want to be. This requires awareness and attention, and we have to be checking ourselves and just constantly asking this question, whatever I'm doing right now, is it bringing me closer to where I want to be, or is it taking me somewhere I want to avoid? And in Surah Al-Hashr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us in this verse where He says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cautions us. He says, don't be like these people who, like the translation of the meaning is something along the lines of, they forgot Allah, and so they were made to forget themselves. Scholars comment that, what does this mean? This is when people forget or just completely neglect the rights that Allah has upon them. The things Allah has asked us to do and to stay away from, people decide to neglect that. And so as a result, they're on their own. They take their own path, and Allah says that it may lead them somewhere. And they're made to forget what's good for them. They're made to forget about doing things that will benefit them in this life and in the hereafter. That's the scary consequence about living in a way where we don't remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the thing is, we live in times where there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of we don't know where to go, and there's a lot of confusing things and pushing us in different directions and a lot of different priorities to deal with. All of that is going on. And so in these times we need clarity. We need to be able to make the decisions about how we live our life firmly and to stick to it. And that is one of the greatest blessings of living a life where we choose to dedicate ourselves to Allah. Because when we do that, we get this clarity and this firmness where we know that this is what I need to do to come closer to Allah, so I will do it. And this is something that Allah has advised me to stay away from, so I will avoid it. Having that strength and that clarity is something that is a blessing from our deen. Because there are a lot of situations that are going to test us. I have friends who maybe have just started their career and are working at some kind of big companies, and for a lot of these kind of environments, a lot of promotions and the kind of right connections you make are at events outside of work. So people are in a situation where they know there's an event coming up, it's kind of some social event, it's not part of work, but you know there's going to be alcohol there, but you also know that so many people who go to these events, they get to know the right kind of people, they make the right kind of connections, and they make a lot of progress in their career. And so we may find ourselves in that situation. Do I go to this event where I know there's alcohol, I know it's not good for me to be around that, or do I hold fast to my principles and do what Allah has asked me to stay away from? You know, sometimes we're deluded or we're distracted into thinking that all this stuff about like putting your firm trust in Allah and the rest will come, that stuff, that's from the old days, from these times of the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ. Those were such great people, and who are we next to them? We'll never get to that level. Sometimes we start thinking like that. And so I wanted to share a story from our times that shows us a glimpse of how this principle, that if you remember Allah and if you're conscious of what He wants us to do, and what He wants us to stay away from, that Allah can open doors and facilitate and protect us in ways beyond anything we could ever imagine, beyond anything that we could ever plan on our own. So this story starts with a brother who grew up in Syria, was raised there, and eventually at some point, this is in the late 70s, like 1979 or so, he decided that he wants to move to America and kind of start a new life. And so, alhamdulillah, things open for him, and he's able to move, and he comes and he starts his life here in Los Angeles. But the brother's married, and he also has kids, and unfortunately, they're not able to join him on his initial journey. So they spend a few years living apart, and surely it's difficult upon the wife and the husband and upon the kids. And so finally, after a few years, an opportunity opens for this brother's wife and kids to come and join him in the United States. So this family, they start on their trip from Syria, they fly, and apparently back in those days, you had to, as soon as you enter the US, you have to fill out your immigration paperwork. So their first stop was in New York City. And they get off the plane in New York City, they still have a connecting flight to Chicago, and then another flight to LA. And so they get off in New York City, and they have to do all their paperwork for their immigration stuff and their green card, and part of that paperwork is getting your photo taken. So the family gets off, and the immigration officers, they tell the lady, and they tell her daughter, who's among them, that, look, because it's immigration photos, we need your ears and to be showing, and so we're going to need you all to take off your hijab. So the mother thought about it. She thought that this is an opportunity, and maybe it's just something temporary, and I'll put it right back on. And she made her call, and she decided to take off her hijab and get the photo taken. So the immigration officers, they come to the lady's daughter. They tell her that, look, we need your ears to be showing for this passport picture, and so we need you to take off your hijab. And the girl says, I'm not taking off my hijab. The officers are like, look, you need this, you're not going to be able to get into the country without this. We need to take your picture, we need you to take your hijab off. And she listens patiently, and she hears them out, and then she just says, I'm not taking it off. And so at this point, the mother is getting frustrated. She's saying, look, we've come all this way to come and see your dad. Don't you miss him? You haven't seen him in so long. It's just a minute or two, just a few seconds, you'll just take this off and put it back on. And you're holding us all up, come on, why can't you work with us here? And the girl listens to her mother patiently and respectfully, and she just says, I'm not taking it off. And they start threatening her. They tell her that, look, if you don't take off your hijab so we can take this picture, then we're going to have to send you back to Syria. And she says, I'm not taking it off. You do whatever you will. But she knew that this was something that Allah asked of her. And so she felt the need that she had to be strong. And this conversation, this back and forth, went on for 3 hours. And this girl was firm until finally, after 3 hours, the officers gave in and said, you know what, we're done with this, you can just take the picture with your hijab. And so she took her immigration photo and it moved on. Well, now, of course, if any of you have traveled internationally, you know the worst thing that can happen is that you miss your connecting flights and it's your own fault. So this mother, she's come with her savings from Syria, she's looking to start a new life, and she has to use a huge chunk of those savings to buy 5 brand new plane tickets to get them to New York, to LA, because they've missed their flight. So you can imagine everybody's kind of frustrated. The mother's like, this wasn't how I was expecting things to go, and everybody's kind of grumbling. And so this family, they get on their later flight, and alhamdulillah, they make it to Los Angeles, where their brother, their dad, and the father and husband, he's there, and he's very excited, and he sees them, and he just breaks down crying and just can't contain himself. And so the family, they see him, and of course they're excited to see him. It's understandable that he would cry, but they're confused. They're like, why are you just bawling? And, like, we've never seen you crying like this. And subhanAllah, it turns out that that flight that they missed because of this holdup with immigration, there was a mechanical failure with the airplane where the jet engine detached from the plane soon after takeoff. And the plane crashed, and every passenger aboard that plane passed away. And so this girl just turned to her parents and she said, do you think are you glad that I kept this hijab on, or should I have taken it off? This hijab that Allah commanded me to wear. So this beautiful, beautiful story shows us, beyond the issue of hijab in particular, just that this girl who knew that this is something that Allah has asked me to do, and so I will stick to it. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects people who are willing to make those sacrifices for Him in ways beyond anything that we could possibly imagine. And it shows us that it's not just people in the past who lived centuries ago who are willing to put their belief in Allah and their conviction in Him above everything else. There are people today who are still like that. And sometimes we have this image in our mind of what it means to be a person who remembers Allah often. And we think of someone who's muttering words under their breath, kind of disconnected from the world around them. And that's not something we should look down on, first of all, because the Prophet ﷺ was described as a person who would sit sometimes in gatherings and just seek Allah's forgiveness silently. But we should also realize that being a person who remembers Allah, who is conscious of what He has asked us to do and what He has asked us to stay away from, that does so much more. The fruits of that are so deep, and it produces people who are firm and strong, people who are proud to be Muslim and to submit before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So hopefully all of us can take from this example and just learn about how there are people among us, and hopefully we can be among them who stand for their relationship with Allah and don't let anything else kind of confuse that clarity and that firmness. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We've been talking about how we live in a world and a time where many people are under the impression that if you want to succeed, if you want to make it far, that you need to leave behind these ideas of worshiping a god or following these rules that are ancient and don't belong to us anymore. Many people think that way, but we looked at how our Quran and our example teaches us that people who are willing to be firm and committed to what Allah has asked them to do, and people who are willing to stay away from what Allah has asked us to avoid, that Allah protects these people and blesses them in ways that we can never imagine. And I don't know, something interesting, if you ever talk to people who are very into fitness or going to the gym, somebody who's been doing it for a few years, if you ever ask them, mashallah, you seem like you're pretty strong, are you done working out? Are you still going to keep it up? And almost many of them, their response is, no, I still have to do this, and my bench isn't strong enough, and they always feel like there's more that they can do. Because they see that going to the gym and being in shape is a good thing, and so they can't get enough of it. And so we as believers should take from that example and realize that if being people who remember Allah, that this is something that is so good for us and this brings so many benefits and raises our station with Allah, it's something we can never get enough of. So something we should always be looking to improve and to enhance how we are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So wrapping up here, I wanted to share a little bit of advice for myself and all of you about how can we gain that closeness and how can we become more conscious of Allah and remember Him like that. Mohammed Aly narrates a hadith Qudsi where the Prophet ﷺ tells us the meaning is explicitly that the meaning is from Allah, but the wording is from Him. This reaches us through Abu Hurairah. A long, very beautiful hadith, but I just wanted to focus on one part of it where the Prophet ﷺ narrates that ما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه. That Allah is speaking, saying, my servant will not come closer to me with anything that is more dear to me than what I have made obligatory upon my servant. And so, if we need somewhere to start, if we're wondering how we can start working on this, this is where we start, is the fara'id, the things that Allah has made obligatory upon each and every one of us. Very briefly, when we think about salah, for example, the 5 daily prayers that Allah has asked us to do. You know, in many narrations, the Prophet ﷺ compares it to bathing in a river 5 times a day. And he asks his companions, you know, if somebody bathes that often, will there be any dirt or will there be any uncleanliness left on them? And of course the companions were like, no, of course not. This person's bathing 5 times a day. And we can relate to this. Think of, maybe each of us, we have our own schedule for how often we take our showers. Maybe it's once a day or once every other day or whatever works for us. And if you ever had a day where you're in a rush, you have to get out of the house quickly and you don't get to take that morning shower that you usually take, it's a very, very uncomfortable feeling. You know, all day you're just sitting, you're thinking, it's like, man, I didn't take a shower. Like, I wonder if I smell. I wonder if anybody around me can smell this. Like, it's just very, very uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel good when we miss a shower that we're used to taking. And so this is how we should look at our salah. That it should be something that we build our lives around. Personally, as a student, for example, in the middle of each semester, we usually get a chance to plan our courses for the semester that's coming. And sometimes, you know, students will come at it with the attitude that I want to knock out all of my courses at once. I just want to come to campus and then leave. So I'll have class back to back from, let's say, 1 to 6 p.m. And when you do that, then you're putting yourself in a situation where it's going to be very hard to pray your salah peacefully. You only have 10 minutes to get from this building to this building, and you don't have time to refresh your wudu and to pray calmly. So these are the things we need to be thinking about. Like, am I setting myself up for benefiting from my salah? Or if we're at work and we have the opportunity to pick when we want to take our breaks, are we timing it so that we are able to catch our salah in its time and also get a chance to pray peacefully? When we look at zakah, for example, this obligation where Allah has asked us to give a very small portion of wealth that we've held on to for some amount of time. You know, when you look in April and March when tax season's coming close and people are so frantic about their taxes, you know, they're worried about how am I going to file this? I need to make sure I filed everything right. And afterwards, people are worried, am I going to get a letter in the mail? Am I going to get audited by the IRS? People are so worried about this. But the thing is that we should ask ourselves, do we have that same level of concern about our zakah? You know, if you've ever been in a situation where somebody goes on a trip and they entrust you with some money, or they tell you that I have this amount of cash, I need you to keep it with you until I come back. How worried and concerned are we about that money? You know, we take care, we put it somewhere nobody else can find it, we make sure nobody accidentally spends from it. As believers, we're very worried about taking care of this trust that another person has given us. And so we need to realize that our scholars and the Prophet ﷺ have described zakah as if some person out there who is poor or who just can't afford to meet their basic needs, their money, the money that's going to buy them their basic needs, is hiding somewhere among their wealth. And so if we are not careful in particular about this zakah, we could be depriving someone of a trust that we have to fulfill. So this is something that we need to pay attention to, and especially if we're younger people who are moving into the workforce and things like that, to learn about these things and to find people who know and ask them so that we can take care of these obligations, because there's nothing dearer to Allah than fulfilling these obligations that Allah wants. And finally, this journey of Hajj, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where you have a chance to go and to perform an act of worship in literally the footsteps of where the Prophet ﷺ did so. And this opportunity to come back completely cleansed of any sins we have committed. This is something that hopefully we should be excited for and looking forward to. And for those of us who haven't had the chance to go, then it's something we need to ask ourselves. Am I just hoping that one day I'll have $6,000 or $7,000 left over and then I'll make Hajj? Or is this something I'm planning for, I'm setting aside money each month, I'm working towards trying to fulfill this obligation that Allah has asked of me? So hopefully we can start there. Start with these fara'id, with these simple things that Allah has obligated upon us, because there's nothing dearer to Allah by which we can come close to Him than doing these obligations. We ask that Allah help us to be people who remember Him in our speech, in our hearts, in our actions. Allah, make us believers who are proud to bear witness that we worship Allah. Allah, give us the strength to hold firm to our faith when it's tested, and bless us to be among those whom you love and whom you draw close. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid, wa barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Ibadullah, إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقيموا الصلاة